Hi, my name is Dan Fromer. I am obsessed with how and why people spend their time and money. My background is in business and financial journalism. You may have read a publication I helped start 15 years ago called Silicon Alley Insider. Now Business Insider. You probably read my coverage of Apple earnings. But since 2019, I've been running The New Consumer, which is a newsletter, podcast, consultancy, advisory about this intersection and the collision of consumer and tech. And that's everything from Ozempic to AI, which I'm going to talk about today. I'm also, just for personal background, a 90s internet kid. I've been into AI for way too long. In high school, we built an Eliza chatbot to troll one of our classmates back in the 90s. So I've been looking at this stuff for a long time and excited to now kind of cover it as a researcher and journalist. My research partner is a fund in New York called Coefficient Capital, where I'm also the head of research and data. They are investors in digitally native, I just want to make sure the right slide is up here. It is, perfect. They are investors in digitally native consumer brands like Magic Spoon. They're also investors in more technology-focused things such as Zoe, a nutrition platform. And since 2020, now for 5 full years, we've been working together on what we call the Consumer Trends Report. It's our homage to the Mary Meeker deck. We've done, I think, 10 or 11 of them now. I'm working on 2 more right now. And we look at the consumer. We try to build a narrative around where things are going in some aspect of the consumer. We use a lot of different data sources. We've done a lot of work on things like TikTok Shop recently. You may have seen some of the crazy charts we published. Everything from like plant-based meat to, again, AI, which I'll talk about today. A big part of our research is what we call the Consumer Trends Survey. We work with a leading survey firm called Toluna to do an original survey of more than 3,000 US consumers. We do, I think, 3 this year. They're designed to be nationally representative. And so a lot of the information I'm going to share today is based on our proprietary survey. Thank you to Toluna. It's a pleasure to work with them. And so let's get started. So AI, basically everybody in the US has heard of AI. In our most recent survey, including some AI questions, 94% of Americans say they have heard of AI. To put that in context, that is bigger than Doritos, TikTok, Viagra. A lot of people know about AI. How well do they know it? How well do they know about it? About half of Gen Z and millennials, younger consumers, say they are either extremely or very familiar with AI. There is very much a generational thing at play here. I'll get into some more about that as it goes on. Older generations less likely to think that they are extremely or very familiar with AI. And it's become a bigger part of culture. People are talking about AI a lot more. Specifically, you can see this spike kind of when ChatGPT launched a little over a couple years ago. News coverage basically went up a lot then, or maybe, yeah. And then my chart here kind of goes through the end of January when DeepSeek was very much a almost mainstream topic of discussion, not just in the tech world, but in the world. How much are people spending on AI right now? This is research from a company called App Figures, which just published actually a very long research report on AI mobile apps. Some of their data seems a little questionable, but I believe this chart matches a lot of other things I've seen. Basically a $2 billion annual run rate based on specifically what they're looking at, which is consumer spending on AI mobile apps. So they kind of scraped the iPhone and Google app stores to come up with this. What are people using? The most popular apps by far are what they call general assistants and core models. Actually, the ChatGPT app and Claude are in the core models group, and then general assistants are things that are built on top of those APIs. But then also a lot of interest in things like graphics generators, companion apps, which is kind of this nebulous term for friend, boyfriend, partner, whatever. However people are using AI-based partners or friends. And then things that are a little less common are things like music generators, health and fitness, lifestyle. I imagine those will go up as they become more useful and less novel. Consumer spending on ChatGPT, here's a different thing. This is just on OpenAI alone, has doubled, basically more than doubled year over year. This is a different panel. This is actual credit card data. So this is from a company called Earnest Analytics. They have access to millions of Americans, consumer, not business, credit and debit cards. So this is literally consumers paying for ChatGPT Pro or other subscriptions. And that's a pretty good chart. I like that chart. How does that compare to other AI tools? This is the share of consumer spending on 56 different merchants. OpenAI is about 2/3 of it. And then you see Google Gemini, Claude, Anthropic, and Midjourney are kind of much smaller than ChatGPT, let's be fair. And then 52 combined are now about 1/4 of the market. So ChatGPT has really taken the wind out of the market. But what does that mean? What is the actual kind of more useful context for that? It's kind of the size of a mid-grade streaming service now. If you look at like Paramount Plus and YouTube Premium, in just over 2 years, ChatGPT is almost as big as one of those in terms of consumer spending on a monthly basis, which is kind of cool. It's about 1/5 of the way to Spotify. This is, again, monthly spending on consumer credit and debit cards. So impressive, 2 years versus, I don't know how Spotify's been around for what, 15 or so, maybe 20 almost. But it's still only 1/5 of the way there. So still a ways to go before this is something that everybody is paying for. What about retention? How long do people stick with it? Again, it's kind of like a mid-grade streaming service. People generally don't quit Spotify or Netflix very often, but OpenAI, in terms of this is percentage of consumers retained after X number of quarters, so a year and a half in, just over half of people are still paying for their OpenAI subscription, or perhaps they've left and come back. Better than Paramount Plus, and not as good as Spotify. Netflix is in the Spotify range there. So not as addictive as Emily in Paris, but that makes sense. How are consumers using ChatGPT? I asked OpenAI. They actually did a survey about this last year. They sent me words and not numbers. So take that for what it is. But basically right now people are using it for writing and editing and coding. And what they supposedly say they want to be using it for is learning new skills, collaborating, step-by-step guidance, education, health and fitness, career development, that sort of stuff. Essentially apps based on AI which don't really exist in any super compelling form yet. In our survey, there's a big generational difference in AI use. About half of Gen Z and more than half of millennials say they are using AI for work already. This was kind of middle to late of last year, so it's probably up a little more since then. I'm actually running a new survey next week, so we'll have fresh data next time we see each other. But again, kind of a generational difference here. And this is just among workers too. So this is people who are employed full-time or part-time. This is not retirees. People who use AI at work are open about it generally. More than half say that they disclose it to their coworkers fully, but some don't. And certainly in some workplaces, it would probably be weirder than others to talk about what you're doing with AI, especially with some fears of replacement or whatever. Also, another really interesting generational difference here. Most young consumers have used AI for entertainment. We kind of let them define that however they wanted to, but again, pretty stark generational difference here. My personal form of entertainment from AI is using Midjourney to design packaging for a sardine-flavored soda company that perhaps I'll launch someday. And recently I actually had Sora make me some 90s-style TV commercials set on a beach, which I'll show you later. They're actually pretty fun. But this is a kind of a youth story here. Again, App Figures says that more than half of the people in its panel using the ChatGPT app are under, what is it, under 25. By the way, Claude, really great at taking a screenshot and turning it into a CSV. So that took about 1 second to turn several of their PDF charts into my style. So try that at home. Of course, ChatGPT, also very popular with students. This is the Google Trends for ChatGPT and Roblox, and you can very clearly see when there is a summer or winter vacation, because searches for Roblox are higher during the summer and winter than they are of ChatGPT. And then now look at winter finals this year was definitely the all-time high of Google searches for ChatGPT. How are students using ChatGPT? Pew just put out a big study on this. 80% basically of teens have heard about ChatGPT, up from 67% in 2023. This literally just got published like last week, so this is pretty current. A quarter of teens, 26%, admit to using it to help with their homework. I say admit because, let's be real, that's not the real number. But a quarter of them admit to it, up from 13% in 2023. We used IRC. We just kind of made all the homework a communal project, and it worked great. More likely among older teens, so seniors in high school, than freshmen. Also more likely among Black and Hispanic teens to say they're using ChatGPT for homework. Most teens say it's acceptable to use it for research. They're generally split on whether it's acceptable to use it to like do math problems and that sort of stuff. And then relatively few, only about 40% say it's acceptable. 42% say it's unacceptable to use it to write papers and that sort of stuff. So the rest are kind of split between that's not cool, or I don't know what ChatGPT is, or I don't have an opinion. So a large percentage kind of feel that this is unethical. Where is AI going? It's obviously going to a more, as far as consumers go, in one place, it's going toward a more get stuff done for you use case. This is something that Instacart announced, I think this week or last week, but basically they've been a longtime partner with OpenAI. They've had various different iterations of ChatGPT-based search and response features in their app. Now, if you're a pro or one of the paid levels of ChatGPT, you can have a more elaborate agent-style relationship with Instacart that lets you say, I need to throw a dinner party. The theme is Italian feast. Just buy it all and send it to my house. And it's basically there, which is kind of cool. Still super niche. You have to be a paying member. You have to actually want to use this service. You have to figure out that it exists. But we're very early with these things. I talked a bit earlier about how this is kind of a generational thing. And we do a lot of research about how young consumers think differently than older consumers, especially digital natives, Gen Z, and millennials. And I want to just share a couple more pieces from our research that I think should paint a bigger picture of how younger people in particularly will just be, I think, a little more primed for these tools and the impact of AI on the world than older generations. Most Gen Z and millennials say they consider themselves a gamer. We kind of let them define that for themselves, but again, a very stark generational difference here. My personal view is that the combination of generative AI, AR and VR, and legal weed gummies is going to create something that is very entertaining. We just haven't gotten there yet. More Gen Z and millennials say they feel most like themselves online as opposed to offline. Again, a pretty stark generational difference here. More Gen Z and millennials also consider themselves to feel more connected online than offline. I don't have the slides here, but a very large portion of them also say they feel more valued for their talents online as opposed to offline. more respected. So there is just this kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say online first persona that a lot of people have, but that's kind of what it is. And then in terms of how they think about AI, how they value it, about half of Gen Z and millennial consumers consider AI art to be art, highest among millennials, much different than their older siblings or parents who are much less likely to say they consider that to be the case. Will AI become the dominant form of entertainment, or at least part of it? We asked across 4 different verticals: movies, art, music, and books. Will most of these be created by AI in 20 years? And then will the best of these be created by AI? And here I have kind of the bucket of people who say at least somewhat agree with this. So it's about 40%, actually very similar across each of these different verticals, almost no variation between them. A large portion of Gen Z and millennials do think that not only in terms of volume, but in terms of quality, a lot of the good stuff, a lot of the best stuff will be at least somewhat created by AI. Now, if you just strip out the people who extremely agree with this, who feel very strongly about it, it's only about 10 to 15% depending on the category. So yeah, so take that for what it is. And then how do people feel about AI? There's another very stark generational difference here. I separated Gen Z and millennials. This was multiple choice, so these were their choices. But you know, the ordering and the rank here is pretty interesting. Number 1 for young consumers is excited. Almost 40% say they're excited about AI. More than a third say they're hopeful or amused or happy. Only 30% say they're worried. And then far fewer say they're sad or angry about it. I guess not many people are sad or angry about it. But then if you look at older generations, Gen X and boomers, half of them are worried about it, by far the number 1 response. Fewer are, and then scared is number 3. Excited is, you know, much smaller. It's half basically the portion of younger consumers. Thank you so much to all of you for listening. Thanks to my research partner, Coefficient Capital, to Luna and Ernest for the data. Again, I'm gonna be running another survey like in 2 weeks. So this is my email. Please email me if you have some ideas for things we should ask our panel about how they think about anything from you know, AI-generated marketing videos to how they interact with brands using technology. If you have any ideas for either 1 or 2 or 3 survey questions that you think would be really useful or interesting to people in your lines of work, we love submissions and that kind of stuff. And look at that, I'm even 2 minutes early. So thank you so much, really appreciate it, and I look forward to meeting a lot of you.